Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and welcome to the Practical Stoic Podcast, where I give you practical Stoic advice for modern times. If you'd like to see more information about the podcast, or if you'd like to see more of my free resources, you can go to my website. It's risetothegoodlife.com. If you have been getting a lot of value out of this podcast, then please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you're listening to this, and leave a positive review. But for now, enjoy this episode. Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and welcome to the Practical Stoic Podcast. Before I start the show, I wanted to tell you guys about an idea that I've had. For quite some time now, I've been wanting to add an extra episode every week to the podcast, and I've been thinking about some ideas for what that extra show would look like. And the idea that I've thought of is based around me wanting to create more of a community here. I really want there to be more dialogue between myself and all of you who are listening, because my job here isn't only to teach Stoic ideas, but it's also to help you all to stay on track until you see results. You know, I think that one of the most important things for any community is the sharing of ideas, experiences, and support. And so what I want to do is to create a Wednesday podcast that is based around all of you sharing your thoughts and stories with the goal of strengthening the community. So basically, from now on, every week, I'm going to be sending out an email to those of you who have subscribed on my website. And in that email, I'll have a question about your journey with Stoicism. If you feel like you have an experience or an idea that could help other people with their Stoic journey, then you can reply to me and I'll add that to the show. Hopefully you can see how beneficial this could be not only for those people who may be looking for more ideas for how to implement Stoicism into their life, but also for the whole community of Stoics. So if you do want to be a part of this, then just head to my website, it's risetothegoodlife.com, and if you scroll down on the homepage, then you should see a little ribbon appear at the bottom of the screen. Here you can subscribe to the list, and I'll be sending you your question for the week. But in case you just really don't want to subscribe, then I'll give you the question for next week now. The question is this: which Stoic practice has most positively impacted your life over the past year? Your answer doesn't have to be long and it doesn't have to be short. All I'm looking for is an authentic response that could potentially help somebody else on their Stoic journey. So this new idea may work or it may be an absolute flop, but still I'm very excited to hear from you guys about how Stoicism has been impacting your life. And I really hope that you can get involved because this could be a really helpful episode for anyone who is trying to live a more Stoic life. So just think about that question, and if you've got a great answer, then just head to my website and send me an email. And hopefully I'll be able to read it next week on Wednesday. But for now, on with this episode. Throughout history, mankind has introduced many definitions of the Judgment Day, or the Day of Reckoning. Each religion varies in its ideas about how we will be judged regarding our time here on Earth. And some believe that this day will be for all of us to be judged, while others believe that this will be a day when only you are judged. But most of them do have this idea in common: that there will come a time when we will stand exposed, with everything on the table, waiting to see if God or the gods or the universe or whatever deity is residing approves of your time spent on Earth. You know, in many ways this can be a very positive belief, because it can encourage us to live the best life that we can, and to be the best person that we can be. Even Seneca himself taught that it was important to believe that we are constantly being judged and watched. He said, quote, "We should indeed live as if we were in public view, and think too as if someone could peer into the innermost recesses of our hearts, which someone can. For what is to be gained if something is concealed from man when nothing is barred from God? He is present in our minds, in attendance in the midst of our thoughts." End quote. This really is some beautiful advice, that we should live our lives as if we were being constantly watched. It really aligns perfectly with the idea that we are judged honestly by what we do when nobody is looking. You know, I was recently reading some of Seneca's letters, and I found a paragraph that could very well be interpreted as the Stoic definition of Judgment Day. And if not that, then at least a very helpful way to look at life and how we are living it. So here's that paragraph. Seneca said, quote, "I'm going to leave it to death to settle what progress I've made. Without anxiety, then, I'm making ready for the day when the tricks and disguises will be put away, and I shall come to a verdict on myself, determining whether the courageous attitudes I adopt are really felt or just so many words, and whether or not the defiant challenges I've hurled at fortune have been mere pretense and pantomime. Away with the world's opinion of you. It's always unsettled and divided. Away with the pursuits that have occupied the whole of your life. Death is going to deliver the verdict in your case. All of your debates and learned conferences, your scholarly talk and collection of maxims from the teachings of philosophers are in no way indicative of genuine spiritual strength. Bold words come even from the most timid. It's only when you're breathing your last that the way you've spent your time will become apparent. I accept the terms and feel no dread of the coming judgment. End quote. Now, firstly, that has to be one of the most badass endings to any quote that I've ever read. But more importantly, I think that this depiction of a day of judgment differs from most other ideas, as it's more about a personal judgment as opposed to a deity being the judge. Seneca says, I'm making ready for the day when the tricks and disguises will be put away and I shall come to a verdict on myself. Or in other words, I will understand at this moment, when I'm face to face with death, whether or not I was the person who I said I was. And he also points out the very important idea that no amount of study or listening or reading will give you the spiritual strength that comes from actually living and breathing the principles of Stoicism. It is simply not good enough to just say that you are one way or the other. You must practice these beliefs every single day. There is also a particular emphasis on death in this paragraph, because in many ways, Stoics see death as the ultimate challenge to overcome, because so many people are so frightened of dying, and even the idea of it can completely paralyze someone. And so if you can overcome this fear of death and come to terms with the fact that you will soon die, then you can really come to a new level of spiritual strength. Also, if you know that you will soon die, then this knowledge will encourage you to live a better life than the one you are currently living. This is why the Stoics always said memento mori, or remember you will die, because it encourages us to live more fully while we are alive. Another thing that's very interesting about that paragraph is that Seneca is talking about death in a sense that it is the final judgment. He says it's only when you're breathing your last that the way you've spent your time will become apparent. But in my opinion, we don't have to wait until we're about to die in order to truthfully judge the way that we are living. In a way, I believe that every single day offers many quote-unquote judgment days, but it takes mindfulness to actually recognize them. Here's an example. You say that you care about the environment, but what do you do when you're walking on the beach and you see a plastic bag blowing along in the sand? Do you decide to live by your values and pick it up? Or do you let it blow by? And on top of this, are you even conscious of the fact that in that brief moment in time, you have an opportunity to check yourself and to decide if you are who you say you are? This is a brief moment of personal judgment. Another example, you say that your kids come before your work. So what happens when your boss asks you to come in on Saturday when you've already promised to be at your son's soccer game? Do you hold true to the values that you say you hold? Or do you show who you really are and decide to take the Saturday shift? And again, do you even recognize that this is a brief moment of personal judgment, where you can see yourself for who you truly are? Now, I should point out that I'm not making a moral judgment here. I'm not saying that you should pick up the rubbish on the beach or that you should choose your son's soccer game over work. But what I'm saying, as I'm sure Seneca would agree with, is that you should constantly evaluate your life and the balance between who you say you are and who you actually are. You should be mindful of these moments of personal judgment and use them to either reevaluate or strengthen your positions. Seneca talked about death being the final judgment because he always said that he did not fear death, and so the coming of death would be a true test of whether or not he actually believed what he was saying. But what about you? Who do you say you are? How do you react when those very things that you say you're not afraid of are right at your doorstep? What do you do when you say that something is important to you and then something better comes along? You say you're a kind person, but What do you do when someone is in need of help and the crowd has turned their backs? These are the moments of judgment in our lives, the times when everything that we believe is put to the test. So, I'd like to encourage you to be mindful of these micro-judgment days in your life. Scrutinize yourself before others have the chance. Be your own ruler and choose to call yourself out when you're not living in alignment with your values. Decide to live the examined life, or in the words of one of the greatest modern philosophers, Ice Cube, check yourself before you wreck yourself. To finish this episode, I'd like to share one of my favorite quotes from Marcus Aurelius. It's a quote that really sums up the main message that I've tried to get across in this episode. He says, "Speak no more about what a good man should be one." Hi there, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really appreciate the fact that you guys are spending this time to listen to what I'm saying and hopefully to use it to make your life better. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter how much you listen to me. What matters is actually how you're applying these principles into your life. Because there is no progress without action. So do remember that if you want to be a part of the Wednesday podcast at all over the next few weeks or however long it goes for, then just sign up on my website. You can put your email in there. It's risetothegoodlife.com. And every week I'll send you some Stoic inspiration as well as the question of the week. Otherwise, if you'd just like to get in contact with me, just go to my website again and go to my contact page and you can send me an email from there. Otherwise, you can go to Facebook at Practical Stoic Quotes. So I'll talk to you next time, but until then, I hope that this episode has helped you on your rise to the good life. Ciao. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Practical Stoic Podcast. I hope that you've gotten a lot of value out of it, and I hope that it helps you to live a better life. If you have been enjoying this podcast, then don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you're listening to this, and leave a positive review so that other people can have the chance to listen to this great work. Don't forget that you can see more free resources on my website at risetothegoodlife.com or on Facebook at Practical Stoic Quotes.